Hello everyone and welcome back to the Highpoints series. In this series, I investigate the plausibility of someone ever climbing the highest point in every country in the world. In part 1 of the series, I set out some of the ground rules for the Highpoints challenge, as well as looked at some of the toughest climbs from a technical standpoint. If you haven't yet seen part 1, I'd highly recommend watching it first. For this video, I'm so happy to announce that Eric Gilbertson has agreed to share his story with us. As of October 2020, Eric has climbed 119 country high points, all 50 US state high points, all 13 Canadian provincial and territorial high points, and is the only person, along with his brother, to climb all the country high points in North America. At only 34 years of age, Eric is third overall in total high points. Eric is a passionate mountaineer, has experience over 7,000 meters, and might one day become the first person to top every single country high point. But as you may well remember from part 1, there are some countries with high points that are off limits, others that are incredibly dangerous, and yet others in war-torn countries or countries led by ruthless dictators. So what does he make of these challenges? Well, in this video I asked him about planning, about logistics, and about the patient mentality required to climb high points.
So I currently live in Seattle and I teach mechanical engineering, and I get the summers off to climb mountains. So
Awesome.
my brother and I started climbing mountains in Kentucky growing up. We go to the Smoky Mountains, and then we were going to school in Boston at MIT and going to New Hampshire on the weekends. So climbing a bunch of peaks there. So we got into peak bagging. And then during grad school, we were interested in doing the state high points. So our dad used to always drive us around to try to visit every state, but we thought, oh, that'd be neat to climb all the high points. So we got all those done during grad school. And then after that, it seems like the next logical step would be, so there are two steps that seem logical. You either go into more detail in the US and do counties, or you go bigger and do countries. And countries sound funner. So the climbing the country high points is kind of like something you can do your whole life. And it's a good excuse to visit every country in the world. And there's so many of them with fun mountains. I mean, even the ones that are just like drive ups, you still get to visit a new country. So it's a really good way to, a really good excuse to travel to a lot of different places. Cuba is the most politically difficult, not for Canadians, for Americans. Yeah. Like we spent probably 2 years trying to get permission. We eventually got permission to officially go there in 2015, there was some like legal way through some people-to-people exchange, we could get permission to go. I think things have changed. I don't know if it's even possible anymore for Americans.
Has that been the most difficult visa to get so far, or entrance into a country?
Yeah, Cuba was probably the most difficult for our passport, for US passport. Afghanistan, you would have thought that would be really difficult, but actually that was pretty easy. You just go to the Tajik border with Afghanistan and pay a couple $100 and they'll give you the visa. Right. North Korea and Iran are probably currently, well, with COVID, US passport is really bad now, but assume like a year ago, North Korea and Iran would have been the hardest politically. So a lot of countries, they'll like go back and forth whether they're open or not. So in 2013, North Korea was open and it would have been fine. And my brother and I were planning to go there, but then it was a little too expensive for us in grad school, so we didn't. And now the window is currently closed. But other ones like the Syria high point. So 10 years ago, people were hiking up. It's on the border with Lebanon. So people were hiking up, doing that, no problem. And then Syria civil war started and it was closed off. But then, so no tourists did it for like 10 years. Then my friend did it last May. There was a couple month window where the Lebanese military were given permission. And he went up there and he got it in May. And so I tried to go in September. And like just a month before that, the Syrian military, they were like firing warning shots up there and taking people hostage and like, okay, now it's closed again. So I got to like 30 minutes below the summit and the guy in the local village with me was like, no, not safe to go any farther. So that window is currently closed. So it might open up again though. Yeah. So I missed that one just by a couple months. Oh my God. And then Sri Lanka is another one. There's a military and radio tower complex on the top, and sometimes they give permission to enter and sometimes they don't. Like my brother went a couple of years ago and he got permission, and I went last summer, and the guys at the base were like, nope, not today. So Mount Kenya in Africa is probably well, that was 5.8. It was like 20 something pitches. Well, if you do the south route, I think it's like 5.6, and it's got bolted rappel anchors, and there's a like a little hut up there. But that was out of season when we were going in September. So we did the North Face route, which is like 5.8 or 9, and it's like 20 something pitches.
Right. Wow.
So that's probably the most technical by grade. It's not the most difficult. So we tried to do Shkara, the Georgia high point from the Russia side, and it seemed a lot icier than the reports I'd read. So I'd read reports of it just looked like a snow climb. Well, we did like 18 pitches of WI 2-3 ice, and we got up to this ridge at like 15,000 feet at like 3 a.m. and it was going a lot slower than we thought. And then a big storm rolled in the next day, and we just bailed on that one. So we are still probably there was a long knife edge cornice ridge between us and the summit.
Yeah, that's what I've read.
So that one is one of the most difficult that we've tried.
And then Noshak, which you both climbed, or just you climbed?
Oh, just me. Yeah, that one is probably the most difficult one that I've got up. So that one, it's funny because you read, like, I've heard people say it's the easiest 7,000 meter peak or the easiest 7,000 meter peak in Central Asia. But I mean, maybe if there were guides doing it and fixing ropes and they were politically stable, but there's no one on the mountain, and the crux is at 20,000 feet. It's like 3 pitches, 5.7 M4, and so I was leading that, and that's pretty difficult. Climbing in crampons, down jacket, like mittens. So that's the hardest one I've done.
And how was the altitude for you there?
I usually acclimate pretty well. We were going a really aggressive pace because I wanted to go do some other mountains afterwards. And so the first summit push, we weren't really as acclimated as we should be. So we're moving really slow. So I got done with like leading the rock pitches, and I just laid down and panted for a couple of minutes. It was just, and then it was really deep snow breaking or really deep trail breaking from there. So we were moving slow enough that a storm came in at noon, and it was a whiteout, so we had to bail. But then we fixed lines on the crux pitches. So we did a rush and rest. We went all the way back down to base camp, waited a couple days. Then we were really well acclimated. And so we went all the way back up in like 2 days. And then I felt like totally fine on the summit.
Great.
So that's a rush and rest worked well for us on that one.
That's good to know too, because Noshak, but that's almost 7,500 meters, right? So that's probably, you're thinking pretty good there for the 8,000ers.
Yeah, we weren't using oxygen or anything. My friends who've done Everest say, I think it's like at 7,000 meters, they start using oxygen, at least for sleeping.
You think that's something you do for Everest, or?
Yeah, I get nervous reading all these old reports about oxygen canisters failing. And it seems like it's almost riskier from what I've heard to be using oxygen. So my friend, he's done Everest, but he tried this first time he failed. He got to the South Summit and his oxygen like failed. It was, I don't know, frozen up or something. Jeez. And now when there was one person in front of him, he was seeing 3. If I could go that high without oxygen, I would prefer to do that, to not have that extra failure mode. We try to be really careful to be as cheap as possible, and there are all kinds of tricks you can do. So like during grad school, we would, if we did good research, we would get sent to these international conferences, and then your flight's paid for, and then on the side we can climb some high points. Like New Zealand, I happened to have a conference in New Zealand, so then we did Mount Cook afterwards.
Right.
And then like, I don't know, conferences in Europe. And then there are other tricks you can do to get free flights. If you sign up for any airline credit cards, you usually get a sign-on bonus, which translates into a free flight. So one of the trips in Eastern Europe, I did that, got a free flight there, but brought my bike. And then I did a 6-week bike tour. And so then I actually figured I saved money versus living in the US, because this was right after graduation. So I wasn't paying for rent. I just kind of stored my stuff and left my apartment. And I'm not paying for transportation because I have a bike. And I'm not paying for sleeping because I just camp in the woods every night. So I was only paying for food. But food in Eastern Europe is half the price of food in the US. So it was actually really cheap. it just takes a little bit longer than if you were driving, but I had plenty of time.
Right.
So probably half of the country high points in Europe we did on bike tours. So that's really cheap.
That's awesome.
So as far as I know, only Bhutan is currently, or Bhutan is the major issue. So
Right.
Colombia, I have a friend of a friend who climbed it a couple of years ago legally with permission from the tribe. And Mountain Madness had secured permission 2 years ago, and I was emailing with them. They had a expedition plan. They got permission from local tribe. Everything was fine. And then some climbers came and snuck in, and they made the tribe mad. And so now the tribe revoked permission. So that one seems like it could be going back and forth. So I feel like that's one just kind of wait, and it'll eventually open back up again. And then Bhutan, it was open like in the 80s or 90s for a little while. And then now the mountain's closed. So I'm kind of assuming just wait long enough and that'll probably open up again. So actually there's another point in Myanmar that SRTM data shows is higher than Hakaborazi. And that peak is much less technical. So there's some guys who went up there a couple of years ago and brought like a survey grade GPS, and they got a pretty accurate measurement of that summit. But Hakaborazi has never been surveyed by bringing a GPS up to the summit like that. It's only higher by some old British survey. So it's a little bit, so that might not actually, if it's really the second highest, then Myanmar may not actually be as difficult. I've rented these GPSs before. For Saudi Arabia, there was this issue, it was 2 summers ago, where everyone thought this one mountain was the high point, Jabal Sauda. But based on SRTM data, there was another, so it's like satellite topography with, so you measure elevation from a satellite, and it has errors up to 15 meters. So there were 2 points in Saudi Arabia that were within the error bounds of SRTM. So either of them could be the high point, Jabal Sauda, which everyone thought was a high point, Jabal Farwa. And so we rented this survey grade GPS. It's like a Trimble GPS. It's like, I don't know, this big. And if you just bring it to the summit and collect like 1,000 points, it can get accuracy theoretically within like 10 centimeters vertical. And so we measured that Jabal Farwa was 3 meters taller than Jabal Farwa with like 98% confidence. So if you could just bring, so that's now the accepted high point of Saudi Arabia. And so if you could just bring that device to Myanmar, you could figure out the true high point.
Okay.
I rented one for this past spring. There's 3 countries in West Africa where it's unclear what the high point is. It's like Senegal, Gambia, and Guinea-Bissau. There's like 2 or 3 candidates. So, I mean, COVID hit then, we had to cancel. But that's another one where it's unclear what the high point is. So Myanmar could be not. Someone's got to go up there.
Someone, that'd be great. Someone else does it, climbs the Hakaborazi with the GPS.
That was the hope with the National Geographic team. They were bringing some survey grade equipment up.
Right. Damn. Well, maybe they'll go back once.
Or maybe I'll just do it with the.
Yeah.
Just do them both.
Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be people with some pretty ambitious plans once the world opens up again.
Probably. Do you have plans?
Yeah, I'd like to do some traveling, and I think what I'm going to do from now on is just, as I'm backpacking, start tagging them and just start doing I'd like to go back to Europe.
There's some fun ones like Austria. Großglockner is pretty fun.
Yeah. The one in Liechtenstein seems pretty cool.
Yeah, that's kind of like a hike. It's like a knife edge ridge on top, though.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you could do Canada high points now.
Yeah, I could do Canada high points now, but Logan's really expensive. Fairweather's expensive. They're pretty expensive.
Wait, Logan, you just gotta. Well, it's probably $1,000 to get the flight.
Yeah, and I need some more cold weather gear for that too.
I mean, I know people who've done Fairweather and Logan like unsupported, just coming from the coast. If you give yourself more time, then it's like it doesn't cost anything.
That's true.
Mount Columbia is pretty close. I mean, I drove through Revelstoke getting to Mount Columbia last spring.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, maybe I'll start with Saskatchewan's high point.
Saskatchewan, Manitoba, those are pretty easy.
Yeah, those should be simple enough. And so I guess with COVID right now, you're just waiting out the storm. Right? Have you guys thought about doing some travel during this summer? Like, or
Oh,
is
next
this
summer is probably
next
the next
summer?
time. Maybe next spring. I don't know. Next summer, I'm
Yeah,
hoping to do some more. I'm
right.
just staying in the U.S. for now. Yeah, we had to
Yeah,
cancel. The original plan last summer was to do the snow leopards, but we had to cancel that. So maybe next summer.
yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. I mean, if you could go and quarantine somewhere for a little. I mean, but I guess it's also your own personal risk tolerance. So
Well, and even if it's safe to not get the virus, if you go to some mountain and you're out of communication for like a month, then who knows if the border has been closed on you or not. That was the biggest risk for this past summer. Like Kyrgyzstan was going to open their border July 1st.
right,
And we're like, yeah, we could get in, but would we be stuck there if cases get bad and they just decide to close their border?
right.
So that was definitely a concern.
Well, thank you, Eric. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
And nice to meet you as well. Yeah. All the best in your adventures too.
Yeah, let's meet up if the border opens.
Yes. Sounds good. All right. Bye bye.